In February, images of the Turkish fifth-generation fighter appeared as the prototype plane was seen taxiing under its own power. It will soon take its first test flight and should enter production within several years. When it enters service, it will be the sixth fifth-generation fighter in the world, with Turkey being one of rare countries that managed to produce such an advanced fighter. How did the Turkish aerospace industry manage such a feat? How does the Turkish fighter compare to its contemporaries? And what future awaits it? Binkov's videos can at times be long. Do you ever wish you could summarize them? Well, we still don't offer that, but Blinkist sponsoring this video does provide something similar. Blinkist app summarizes the most crucial information from a pool of over 5,500 non-fiction books and podcasts in only 15-minute chunks. There's science, society, culture, health and other topics. I can read or listen to Blinks anytime and anywhere on any device. There's also Blinkist Spaces, the new Blinkist feature, where you can create a space with friends or family and recommend titles to each other. All members can access all titles in that space, regardless of who has a Blinkist premium subscription. And I may talk about wars, but recently I've listened to a riveting Blink about the issues veterans face after returning home from wars. It really struck a chord with me, considering Memorial Day is approaching and the US remembers the sacrifices those men endured. On this occasion, you can get a 7-day free trial and 50% off Blinkist annual premium by using my link available in the video description. Offer is valid until May 29th, 2023. So hurry up, subscribe and blink away. Back to our video. The fighter goes under the acronym MMU, standing for National Combat Aircraft in Turkish language, but perhaps it's more known under the unofficial TFX moniker, standing for Turkish fighter, with the letter X usually given to programs in early development. While the plane is definitely out of the experimental development, we'll refer to it as the TFX. In May, it was disclosed the plane's nickname will be Kaan, roughly translating to ruler. This March, the first prototype was finished and started testing. The testing will ultimately have around 7 prototypes participating. When the plane completes its design reviews, production of serial standard planes will commence. What is evident is that the Turkish government and the state apparatus is very much behind the project, and has been so for over a decade now. But before we get into that, let's review the plane design itself. The fighter jet very much resembles an F-22. In certain dimensions, it's even larger. Preliminary dimensions were published by the manufacturer. Estimated dimensions from available imagery may be more accurate though. The maximum takeoff weight was published for an early variant preceding the final design, which was 2 meters shorter than the current 21-meter-long plane. Turkish Aerospace Industries company also says its top speed is Mach 1.8, and its service ceiling is 55,000 feet, or a little under 17 kilometers. Absolute maximum ceiling as for all planes is a bit higher, at 60,000 feet. The service ceiling and speed thus better those of the F-35, though they fall behind the F-22. There are still many unknowns about the fighter, of course, and some of the data may even change during development. There are slides used in industrial requirement presentations available, where it was shown that TFX aims to have a slightly better acceleration than 4.5 generation fighters. Those are fighters like Gripen, Eurofighter, Rafale, Super Hornet and so on. That likely means it can better the F-35 in transonic and supersonic acceleration, which is known for its issues in those regards. There's the combat radius slide, which doesn't give out much info as combat radius is often a function of mission planning. The sole fact 5th generation fighters are stealthy means they can fly high up and use straighter routes, compared to non-stealthy planes which often need to fly low to hide from radar, and that uses up a lot more fuel, and the planes still likely fly roundabout routes to mission areas. Turkish General Ye also shed some interesting details to journalists in 2021. Operational speeds will range from Mach 0.6 to Mach 2. He corroborated the slide that was shown where transonic acceleration will be a bit better than that of an average 4.5 generation fighter. And he said that the TFX will be able to cruise supersonically without the use of afterburners, though its supercruise speed will be a bit lower than that of 5th generation planes. To add to that, the manufacturer's general manager explicitly stated Super Cruise goal was Mach 1.4. That's less than F-22's speed, but more than F-35's, which can barely maintain Mach 1.2 without afterburners. It's likely the Super Cruise goal is referring to the future variant with more advanced engines. Why the speed figure doesn't match the manufacturer's figure is anyone's guess. It could be that the design and requirements have been slightly adjusted since then. But perhaps most importantly, General Ye disclosed the planned radar cross-section goals. The figures he shared still fall behind those of the new US fighters. US figures given here are estimates and extrapolations of vague data given by US officials, and all those figures pertain only against fighter jet radar bandwidths. Russian claims for their Su-57 gave only average RCS values for all aspects, so they are not directly comparable. But still, given the values given, it's not impossible that the TFX will enjoy just as good or even somewhat smaller radar signature than the Su-57. Shape-wise, the TFX is cleaner, and its production methods seem superior, resulting in smoother joints between panels. While offering just rough values, various enthusiasts measured radar returns based on 3D models of planes. Here's how TFX competitors fared. These values do not take into account radar-absorbing materials. They also rely on not truly accurate 3D models, but they're still useful enough to give a rough estimate. If the Su-57 had the same quality of radar-absorbing materials as F-35, then it might feature RCS of up to 0.014, which again likely puts it at similar values suggested for the Turkish TFX. In practice, such differences in radar cross-section mean that against a generic fighter jet radar, which might otherwise detect a target with a 10 m² RCS at 300 km, Turkish TFX might be detected at little under 60 km, if the 0.01 RCS claim ends up being valid. For comparison, the F-22 might be detected by the same radar at little over 30 km away. That's because detection ranges aren't linear with RCS changes. The design of the whole plane is evidently similar to the F-22. What that means is that Turkey intends to optimize it for similar missions as the F-22. So it's going to be an air superiority fighter. While the F-22 could have been more of a multi-role fighter than it is, politics and budgeting did not allow it. Since the TFX is going to replace the F-16 in Turkish service, a robust multi-role mission is a given. That, the lackluster engine issue, and possibly the lack of US-level expertise when it comes to the art of intake shaping led the TFX maker to some design differences. TFX is, as said, even longer than the F-22. But not only that, its intakes start closer to its nose, while its engines end closer to its tail, which means the plane's intakes are much longer than usual. That may indicate Turkish engineers could not achieve the same performance as the US in a fairly compact package. Plus, the TFX has to be designed with significant built-in room for supporting more powerful engines in the future. Right now, the TFX is powered by US-made F-110 engines, same ones used on newer F-15s and, more importantly, on Turkish F-16s, which means Turkey is very familiar with those engines. It can maintain them on their own, and through the years it even increased the number of replacement parts it can produce for those engines domestically. Even if the US and Turkey's relationship sours, it's likely Turkey could scrap together enough engines from the F-16s to keep developing the TFX. Current development roadmap plans for the prototypes to use the US engines, but also the first block of service standard planes, which is planned to be at least 40 airframes strong. The following block is hoped to feature a domestic Turkish engine. Turkey is working with the British Rolls-Royce engine company on engine tech. Turkish Kale company formed a joint venture in 2016 where it controls 51% and Rolls-Royce controls 49% of the new company, TAEK, or Turkish Air Engine Company. Kale company officials said that they use Rolls-Royce as a technological resource, so there is now what's dubbed the TF-141 engine, now in early development, which is hoped to be flight-ready for the year 2030. Its planned max thrust figure is 35,000 pounds, putting it near the F-22 output value. Engine weight and dimensions may not be comparable though. Of course, engine development can be painful and slow, so who knows when actual in-service planes will get domestic engines. Engines are not the only area where foreign assistance is relied upon. Airframe design is being helped by the British BAE, where Turkey allegedly paid $120 million for their expertise in 2017. So it's evident the whole TFX program has some support from the West. Without foreign tech and design expertise, the project would likely have taken longer to materialize. That being said, Turkish aerospace industry does have a lot of experience in certain areas, like materials and construction. It was producing parts for the F-35. After decades of experience producing parts for other NATO planes and even completely producing F-16 airframes. Its drone industry is near the top of the line. That's a topic we already covered in a previous video, but it's worth checking out as it explains just how the Turkish aerospace sector managed to be as successful as it is. Ismail Demir, president of Turkish government's defense industry agency, said that 1/3 of TFX subsystems are currently domestic, the goal being to increase that figure over the years. But other sources claim local components account for 85% of the plane, besides the engine, ejection seat and some valves being foreign. It's likely those two claims are apples to oranges comparisons though, with the 85% one perhaps using weight or some other similar metric. None of that is strange, as even the Swedish Gripen, for example, sources 50% of its subsystems from other countries. Turkish Aerospace General Manager Temel Kotil said the plane's wings are assembled into a one-piece composite part, that the skin of the plane is composite with aluminum and titanium frames inside. Many components were machined or printed as single large parts, saving weight. Indeed, if rumored part weights are true, complete airframe weight, once furnished with subsystems, might be just a ton or two more than F-35's empty weight. Even if somewhat heavier than that, it will still likely be lighter than the F-22. Part of that is likely due to less radar-absorbing materials used, which can be heavy. Part of it may be if the lifespan of the airframe is planned to be shorter. Both of those points might be stemming from inadequate engine power. In a way, the TFX simply can't afford to be heavy with its weak engines, so the overall design will likely somewhat suffer to compensate for that. But production quality surely helps lower weight. Quality is indeed high. Panels produced for the prototypes indeed feature snug fits and very neat fasteners, much closer to F-35 quality standards than, for example, what was shown on the Su-57 prototype. Just as robots were used for painting the F-35 parts in Turkey, the same process is used for the TFX painting. Another peculiarity, likely stemming from the fact engines lack power, leading to a very thin and lean but also long fuselage, good for drag, is the weapon bay arrangement. It has two side bays for short-range missiles, very similar to ones on F-22. But when it comes to the main underbelly weapon bays, those are more similar in arrangement to Su-57s, as seen here. One can also see that the multi-role requirement, calling for larger air-to-ground weapons, may have played a role. With the depth of the bays needed and the thin fuselage available, placing the bays in between of the intakes may have been a better solution, as opposed to placing them under the intakes like on the F-22. This slide shows even medium-sized laser-guided bombs are planned to be carried internally. Allegedly, the domestic Turkish SOMJ small-form cruise missile is being altered so it can fit into the TFX. Also, small-form bombs are evidently going to be part of TFX's armament. The TFX also has two separate optical and thermal sensors, one underneath the nose, likely optimized for air-to-ground missions, and one over the nose, likely optimized for air targets. That too points to a multi-role nature of the plane. Most planes do not have two such sensors. Turkey has a rather prolific weapons industry, with lots of options for domestic guided bombs. What it doesn't have but is working on are air-to-air missiles. Its Göktürk program hopes to develop both medium and short-range missiles. Given the long development times of the plane itself, it's likely a broad range of weapons will be ready for it by 2030. Comparing the TFX internal carriage loadout with those of other 5th generation fighters, the Turkish plane compares decently. Values for air-to-air will of course change over time, with newer variants of mentioned planes being able to pack a few more missiles. Similar loads for bombs are likely as well, with the TFX lagging slightly behind the voluminous bomb base of the F-35A, but being ahead of the base of the F-22. Loads like holding 4 half-a-ton bombs or 8 small-form bombs internally seem plausible. The radar for the TFX is going to be a domestic design. Turkish industry already has experience with AISA arrays, and the current plan is to have a working prototype tested on the plane in 2025. The TFX is also planned to feature separate cheek radar arrays to better observe flanking threats. That's a feature that F-22 was supposed to get back before the project solidified, but never got them. The Su-57 does have similar arrays though. There are other items on the wish list, often mentioned by Turkish officials. How much of that is going to materialize and when is another matter. But the TFX is planned to have very precise electronic emission sensors. It's supposed to geolocate emissions for DEAD missions. In the past, the more used acronym was SEAD for suppression. But since the sensors became so precise, modern planes like F-22, F-35 and Rafale have boasted of being able to launch bombs to precise coordinates. Enough so to directly destroy radar emitters. General manager of Turkish aerospace industry even said TFX will use lasers to neutralize incoming missiles. That comment very likely refers to a direct countermeasure laser to blind the missile seeker, not a powerful laser to actually destroy the missile. Such a countermeasure is present on the Su-57, but not on US planes for now. Turkish Exin company, developing various electronic warfare systems, is said to be developing an active emitting decoy for the TFX. Images seem to point to a canister launch decoy, like the British Bright Cloud. The decoy itself would have no powered flight, but due to its tiny size, a dozen or more could be carried at once. Rough outline of the cockpit can be seen here. Today it has become a standard to have very large touchscreens all around the cockpit. This image is perhaps more interesting, showing a helmet-mounted display. There were various other tidbits mentioned by Turkish officials as well, like the fact the plane will have a separate cooling system which will cool the engine exhaust to lower the infrared signature, or that an automatic routing and landing system is planned in case the pilot loses consciousness. And interestingly, that the TFX will not get the twin-seater variant. While 2 seats have not been required to train new pilots for a few decades now, the latest trend does suggest a second seat might be beneficial for other operative reasons, like aiding in control of loyal wingman drones. For example, the Chinese J-20 recently got such a variant. The whole project is certainly very ambitious, and as most new fighter projects go, it may run into delays. On the other hand, it does seem to be running very quickly so far. Turkish officials mentioned using digital engineering to speed up the development. This image shows one of the earlier planned timelines for the project. The difference being is that the first flight has been moved from 2026 to 2023. That seems quite peculiar, but what's also weird is that the original plan had 3 years from the rollout to first flight. That basically never happens in other programs. So the new first flight date is much closer to what other plane development schedules experience. Part of the reason for the move may be political. October 29, 2023 will mark the 100th anniversary of the Turkish Republic. That being said, it's not likely that the rescheduling of the first flight will change the service entry date just as much. What has really happened is likely this. Original plan was to have a demonstrator airframe, representative of production quality, and one to perform subsystems integration development on, and to perform various ground tests. And then a true prototype standard airframe would fly. But now, the demonstrator airframe is also to fly. In a sense, this airframe will be similar to the US X-35, or the YF-22, or the early J-20 airframe. The CEO of Turkish Aerospace Industries said first deliveries to the Turkish Air Force are expected in 2028. The TFX may finish testing around 2029. Serial production is rumored to start around 2030, and the Turkish Aerospace Industries official mentioned Block 1 planes will enter service by 2031. But at the same time, officials also said the first 20 TFX fighters will complete delivery in 2034. which suggests the service entry date will be more of a symbolic date, with just several planes operational, and that Turkey is indeed aware that ramping up production of such untested planes is demanding and will take a long time. So what's fairly clear is that despite the long list of various high-tech features, the TFX is still very much new territory for Turkey, and it will take a decade to actually field it, by which time some of its features and capabilities will not be that cutting edge. For example, by the early 2030s, the US is planning to put into service its 6th generation jet, with the Chinese and British-Japanese 6th generation jets being not that far behind either. The infrastructure for such a huge project is being built, with Turkey boasting a second largest wind tunnel in Europe being constructed, world's 4th largest composite parts production facility, and world's 5th largest radar cross-section measurement facility. Given the massive amounts of money that Turkey has been pumping into its aerospace sector in the last few decades, it's evident Turkey is planning to break into top 5 countries when it comes to combat aircraft technology. Alleged development costs so far are planned at over $7 billion. Of course, salaries in Turkey are much lower than in the West. The same plane developed in the US would likely cost 30 or 40 billion. As said, the TFX is still years away from actually serving in anyone's Air Force, but it seems to have the money, the tacit blessing of the West, and the domestic know-how to actually become a true 5th generation fighter eventually, perhaps even one day eclipsing the Russian Su-57 capabilities-wise. That's it for this video. We've been busy first releasing a newsflash video on Friday, plus a big feature video like this one. It's not likely we'll do newsflash videos often, but who knows. In this instance, it was instead of another 60-second short. How do you like those that we've been releasing more lately? Anyway, thanks for watching. Salutations.